Hi, I'm Tim from Tiger Astronomy, and Adventures in Astronomy continues with some Windows Forms controls. Hi, and welcome back to the channel. And I wanted to just mention today a library that I've just released onto NuGet, and you can see on the screen there is the NuGet page for it. It's TA.WinForms.Controls library, currently on version 1.0.1. And these are the same controls that are in the ASCOM platform that provide some annunciators and indicators of various sorts. So I've used these controls extensively in my own projects, particularly in ASCOM drivers, but they're useful for all sorts of things. And okay, so let's have a look at an example of an application I've made that uses these controls. So you can see these are all annunciator controls. There's an LED indicator here. This is one of the controls in the library, and you can see the annunciator up here is flashing, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So let's just close that. And okay, so I'm going to minimize this web browser window, and we can have a look in Visual Studio at how this works. Now, this library, as I say, is on NuGet now, so I'm going to add a NuGet package to my project, and this is just a Windows Forms application. I'm targeting .NET 4.7.2, and so there's currently really no code in the application. I've just done File, New Project. So we can search for TA.WinForms, and NuGet should find that. So here we go, here it is, and we can just install that. And after a brief pause, that should be installed, and there it is, done. Okay, so we can close that window, and now you'll see up here in the top of our toolbox, we've now got the three main controls here: the annunciator panel, and the LED indicator. So let's have a look at an LED indicator first of all. So this is basically a fancy label. So you've got the label here you can set, so you can set the text of the label. If I could, yeah, it's called label text, there we go. So I don't know, you might set it to some kind of text like that, and then in the status here you can see that's currently set to green. So these are traffic light colours. It can be red, yellow or green, which obviously are designed to represent different levels of severity. So we could say we want a red LED, there we go, and then you can give it a cadence. Now a cadence is just means that it blinks in a regular pattern over time, and at the moment it is steady on, but we've got a number of predefined cadences here that we can use. So we could use, say, blink alarm. Let's say let's give it a heartbeat cadence. Okay, so that's just a double pulse, and every few seconds you'll get that double pulse. So you can just pick one of these cadences, and that control will carry on blinking in that cadence until stopped. And so the other controls we've got are the annunciator and the annunciator panel, and these two work together really. So you don't have to use the annunciator panel, and this is basically a flow layout panel but with some default styling choices. And perhaps I should cover what an annunciator is. So if we just actually go back to our other screen, and here's a picture of a real-world annunciator panel, and you would find these they're quite common in aeroplanes or on fire alarms in buildings, burglar alarms and things like that. So basically anything that needs to provide status indications could use one of these annunciator panels. So the controls in the Windows Forms control library here are designed to mimic that real-world panel, and the dark background color works well in an observatory or any situation where you've got low light conditions, and such as in an aircraft cockpit or in an astronomical observatory. And then it also gives a nice high contrast for the annunciators that you're going to put on it. So typically I might stretch that to go all the way across my window, and then we can take an annunciator control, and I'm going to deliberately drop the annunciator there, and you'll see that the annunciator takes on the background color of whatever control it's dropped onto. So when I take that and drop it into the panel, it takes on the background color of the panel. Okay, so I'm just going to big up the font a bit on here, because the default 10-point font is kind of small, so I'm just going to turn that up to 22 points so we can see what it's doing. And I'm just going to change this to some label that I might want to display. And again, in the same way as the LED indicator, you've got a cadence that you can set, and these are the same cadence patterns as before. So we might want to say blink slow, say, which will give us a nice steady on-off pattern. Now you can see that you can actually see what this is going to look like right in the designer, which I find very useful. And then you can also change your active color, and the inactive color is chosen so that it almost matches the background but not quite. So you can see that when the annunciator is off, you can still actually read what it says just about, but it is unmistakably off. And we found that users kind of like being able to see what their alarm panel could tell them if there were an alarm. It kind of gives them a cue as to what to expect. But this is a personal choice, really, and if you wanted to, you could set that background color to something different or something the same color as the panel here, and then the annunciator would completely disappear when it is off. But we kind of like this barely visible look. And in fact, you can change the foreground color to anything you want. So I kind of like dark sea green. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, so dark sea green. Okay, and now that continues to flash in the new color. And this is designed so that you can set these controls up ahead of time in the designer and get them looking exactly as you want them. And then programmatically at runtime, you can just set this mute property, and the mute property just stops it flashing and displays it in the inactive state the whole time until you unmute it. So you can just leave the cadence the same, and you don't have to change that in code, and just got this one Boolean thing, mute, which you set true or false. And I find that's kind of the default recommended way to use one of these annunciators, is set it all up in the designer, get the colors and the cadence that you want, and then at runtime just use the mute property. Okay, and that's all there is to it, really. This is a flow layout panel, so you can grab this annunciator and copy it and make another one, and they will just flow across the panel like this until they become too long, and then it will wrap down to the next row. Okay, there's also so if I click this second one in, you'll notice there's a flow break property, and sometimes I have to sort these alphabetically because I can't find the things. There it is, flow break. So flow break is false. If I set that to true, then you can see that that causes that line of the flow panel to end there, and the next item is on the next line. So that's another useful thing to bear in mind. Okay, so you can build up some interesting displays like this using a combination of the LEDs and the annunciators. You saw my weather panel that I've produced, which displays a whole load of weather readings in various colours depending on whether they would be safe for observing or unsafe for observing. And you find that a few ASCOM drivers actually use these controls as well, because as I say, they have been part of the ASCOM platform for well over 10 years. They did have the ones that are in the ASCOM platform, there are 1 or 2 bugs in that code which result in the controls not always displaying quite correctly. So this library is a updated, modernized version of those controls with some of the bugs fixed. So you might consider using this instead of the ones that are in the ASCOM platform. So there we go. That's the Tiger Astronomy Windows Forms Control Library. Hope you find them useful. Hope you use them in your own apps, and I'd love to see your app if you do. Until then, good luck. I've been Tim from Tiger Astronomy. Thanks for watching, and